sister was secretly studying for free while I paid for her education, but when parents accidentally told the another truth, I made return my money and blocked them. I have always believed in the idea that family comes first. Growing up, my parents instilled that in me, and frankly, I carried it with me into adulthood without much question. When my younger sister Stacy graduated from high school, my parents came to me with a request that seemed both reasonable and urgent at the time. They wanted me to help pay for Stacy's college education. The story they told me sounded simple. They were struggling financially. My father had some health problems that kept him from working full-time, and my mother's job required her to travel abroad often, leaving my father to shoulder most of the financial burden. They couldn't convince anyone else in the family to step up, and Stacy, they said, desperately needed an education if she was to have any chance of a decent career. I was doing well financially, earning more than I needed to live comfortably. It wasn't easy to give up that much money, but I agreed. Stacy was family and I wanted to see her succeed. Over the next year and a half, I paid a total of $70,000 for her tuition, books, and other expenses. I worked hard for that money, but I believed that the universe had a way of rewarding good deeds. The more good you do, the more good will come back to you, I used to tell myself. Looking back now, I cringe at how naive I was. Life went on. I was busy with work and my own family, so I didn't visit my parents very often. But about 6 months ago, I decided to stop by their house for dinner. It had been a while, and I figured it was time to catch up. Everything seemed normal at first. We talked about mundane things like the neighbors, the weather, and some extended family drama. Then my mom said something that turned my world upside down. She was reminiscing about how stressful the past few years had been when she casually mentioned, "It's such a blessing that Stacy's education was free. If it wasn't, I don't know what we would have done." I froze. "What do you mean, free?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. My mom blinked at me, obviously confused. "Oh, well, Stacy's tuition was waived because of this program, you know, the one they offer to high-achieving students." She went on, but I wasn't listening. My mind was racing. I paid for Stacy's education. I knew I had. Where the hell was this free nonsense coming from? I turned to my father, who suddenly looked very interested in his glass of water. Stacy, who had been scrolling through her phone, was visibly tense. My mom, oblivious to the change in mood, continued talking. But I wasn't stupid. Something was wrong. "I need to talk to you," I said, looking directly at my dad and Stacy. And just like that, the mood in the room changed completely. My dad mumbled something about having to check something in the other room, but I followed him. Stacy followed reluctantly, her phone still in her hand. As soon as we were out of earshot of my mom, I looked at her and asked, "What's going on? What did she mean, free?" They didn't answer right away. The silence dragged on, and my patience was wearing thin. "I'm asking you a question," I said more firmly this time. And that's when I noticed Stacy's hand shaking as she tried to put her phone in her pocket. That's when I realized just how deep this rabbit hole could go. The silence between the three of us was heavy. My dad wouldn't meet my eyes, and Stacy clearly avoided looking at either of us. It was as if they were quietly hoping I'd just drop it and walk away. But I wasn't going anywhere until I got some answers. "What's going on?" I asked again, slower this time. "Did you lie to me?" My father finally sighed and leaned against the wall. "Look, it's complicated." "Complicated?" I snapped. "I paid $70,000 for Stacy's education, and now Mom tells me it was free? How is that complicated?" Stacy suddenly chimed in, her voice shaking. "It wasn't completely free," she said, avoiding my gaze. "There were other expenses." "What other expenses?" I demanded. "I paid for everything. Tuition, books, housing, even the stupid meal plan." "So what expenses are we talking about?" Either of them answered. I stood there staring at them until it hit me. They were stalling because they didn't know how to explain it. My chest tightened as the pieces began to fall into place. "They lied to me," I said, almost in disbelief. Did you pocket the money? Stacy immediately shook her head, but she looked panicked. My dad, on the other hand, had that guilty look on his face that told me I was getting close to the truth. Stacy, I said sharply, turning to her. How much of the money I sent you actually went to school? Her face crumpled and I knew. She didn't have to say it out loud, but I wasn't going to let her off the hook. How? A lot. She hesitated for a long time before finally muttering. None. I felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. What do you mean, none? My father finally spoke up, his voice low. It's not what you think. We didn't waste it. We used it for something important. Something important? I repeated, my voice rising. You lied to me, made me work my ass off to pay for Stacy's education, and now you're telling me the money didn't even go for that. What the hell did you do with it? Stacy started to cry, and my dad rubbed his face as if trying to figure out how to say what he was going to say. Finally he mumbled. We used it to save for her future. For a down payment on an apartment. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. You're kidding, I said flatly. It made more sense, Stacy said, wiping her face. The program covered my tuition. You didn't know that, and Dad thought it would be better to use the money to give me a head start after graduation. A head start? I repeated, my voice rising. So you just decided to scam me out of 70 grand to get her a damn apartment? Do you have any idea what I went through to send you that money? I couldn't believe it. All the late nights, the stress, the sacrifices I made just so they could lie to me and siphon off the money for something I never agreed to. They could have just asked me, I said, my voice cracking. You could have told me the truth. I probably still would have helped. But no, you chose to screw me instead. Please don't be mad, Stacy pleaded. We didn't want to hurt you. We just thought it was better this way. Better for who? I snapped. Because it sure as hell wasn't better for me. I couldn't look at her anymore. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving them standing in silence. But this wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't go back to the table after that. I grabbed my coat and left the house without saying a word to my mother. She had no idea what was going on, and I wasn't about to start explaining it right away. My head was spinning and I had to get away before I said or did something I couldn't take back. When I got home that night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room and replayed the conversation over and over in my head. The lies, the betrayal, the absolute audacity of what they had done, it was all so surreal. I had worked for months, cutting back on my own expenses, skipping vacations, and taking on extra projects at work just so Stacy wouldn't have to worry about her education. And for what? So they could funnel my money into some secret, future fund for her? By morning, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to let this go. The next day I went back to her house. This time I wasn't interested in pleasantries. As soon as I walked in, my dad and Stacy knew I was serious. We need to talk, I said, closing the door behind me. My dad sighed like he'd been expecting this, and Stacy looked like she wanted to leave. I want every penny of that money back, I said. Every penny. Wait, let's just talk this through. My dad started, but I cut him off. No, I snapped. There's nothing to talk about. You lied to me. You stole from me. And now you're going to make it up to me. It wasn't stealing, Stacy said softly. We didn't take it for ourselves, Dash. Are you serious? I interrupted. You lied to me about needing money for school. You knew what you were doing. Don't stand there and act like it wasn't theft just because you didn't spend it on designer bags or a vacation. My dad stepped in and tried to calm things down. Look, we didn't mean to hurt you. We thought it was the best way to help Stacy, Dash. Stop, I said. Just stop. I don't care what your reasons were. You don't get to decide what's best for my money. This wasn't your decision to make. They both looked at me as if waiting for me to calm down or soften my stance. But I didn't soften. I'll give you 1 week, I said. 7 days to get the money and pay me back. If you don't, I'm going to go to the police and report you for fraud and theft. You wouldn't do that, my father said, his voice shaking slightly. Try me, I said. No one said anything for a moment. Stacy started to cry again, but I didn't care. I wasn't in the mood for tears or excuses. This is not up for discussion, I said. I'm not backing down, and I'm not letting you talk your way out of this. You have 1 week. That's it. I turned to leave, but before I walked out the door I added, and don't think for a second that I'm going to forgive you for this. Even if you pay me back, we're done. I left her standing there, stunned and speechless. But I wasn't bluffing. They had 7 days to make this right, or I would make sure they faced the consequences. The week dragged on. I tried to focus on work, but every time I looked at my bank account or thought about the sacrifices I'd made, I got angry all over again. I couldn't believe how far they'd gone to manipulate me. By the 6th day, I hadn't heard from them, and I was ready to make good on my threat. But that night, my phone rang. It was my father. I almost didn't answer it, but curiosity got the better of me. We have the money, he said quickly. You can pick it up tomorrow. I didn't say much in response, just a cold, good. The next morning I drove over to their house, expecting to pick up a check or cash and leave without another word. But when I got there, things took a turn I didn't see coming. As I walked into the house, the atmosphere was different. My mother was sitting on the couch, visibly uncomfortable. My dad looked like he hadn't slept, and Stacy wouldn't even look at me. What's this about? I asked, narrowing my eyes. My dad cleared his throat. Before we give you the money, there's something you need to know. I crossed my arms. I don't need an explanation. Just give me what you owe me and I'll go. No, my mother said suddenly. You need to hear this. I raised an eyebrow and waited. Stacy finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't just the apartment. What are you talking about? I asked. She hesitated, glancing at my dad, who nodded for her to continue. We used some of the money to pay off Dad's debt, she said. My stomach dropped. Dead? My father sighed heavily. It wasn't just Stacy's future we were trying to secure. I owed money. A lot of it. To people who, well, let's just say they weren't patient about getting it back. I stared at him, trying to process what I was hearing. You're telling me you used my money to cover your gambling debts? It wasn't gambling, he said quickly. It was investments that went bad. I thought I could turn things around, but it got out of hand. And they were threatening us, threatening Stacy. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So not only did you lie to me about Stacy's upbringing, but you dragged me into this mess? Without even telling me? We didn't want to burden you, my mother said quietly. Burden me? I snapped. You stole from me. How is that not a burden? Stacy started to cry again, but this time I wasn't sure if it was guilt or fear. That's not all, my father said. I threw up my hands. What else could there be? He hesitated before saying, we didn't have the full $70,000 to give you back. My jaw clenched. What do you mean? We could only raise $40,000, he said. The rest is gone. I'm sorry. Gone. Just like that. You've got to be kidding me, I said, my voice shaking with anger. You had a week. A whole week, and you still couldn't get the money together? We tried, Stacy said, still sobbing. We sold things, borrowed from friends, but we couldn't dash. I cut her off. I don't care what you had to do. This is your mess, not mine. And now you're telling me I should just eat the rest of it? We'll pay you back the rest, my father said quickly. I swear. It'll take time, but we'll do it. I shook my head in disgust. No. You don't get time. You don't get anything. I gave you a week and you failed. Now I'm done playing nice. I pulled out my cell phone and started dialing. Wait, my mother said, grabbing my arm. I looked at her, my expression cold. Get out of my way, I said. She didn't move. If you call the police, they'll find out about the debt. The people we owe, they'll come after us. They could come after you, too. I froze for a moment. What are you talking about? My father looked down, shame written all over his face. The people I owed money to, they're dangerous. If the police get involved, they'll think I ratted them out. And they don't take that lightly. I stared at him, my mind racing. This wasn't just a family argument anymore. They dragged me into something much darker than I'd ever imagined. You're unbelievable, I said, backing away. You've ruined everything. And then I left. But as I drove away, I realized I couldn't just walk away from this, not yet. They'd put me in a position where no matter what I did, I'd have to watch my back. When I got home that night, I was still seething. My head was spinning with everything I'd just learned, the lies, the stolen money, and now the added layer of danger my dad had dragged me into. I needed to vent, and the only person I trusted to give me some perspective was my wife, Emma. Emma was in the kitchen when I walked in. She took one look at me and knew something was wrong. Bad day? She asked gently. You could say that, I said, dropping my keys on the counter. She sat me down at the table, poured me a glass of water, and waited patiently while I spilled everything. I didn't hold back. I told her about the fake tuition bills, the housing fund, the debt, and the fact that my dad had basically used my money to get out of a shady situation with dangerous people. When I finished, Emma's face was a mixture of shock and concern. But her reaction wasn't what I expected. Honestly, she said after a long pause, I think you should just take the $40,000 and let the rest go. I stared at her, stunned. What? Are you serious? You still owe me $30,000. I know, she said, her tone calm. But think about it. If what your father said is true, getting the police involved or pushing them too hard could make things worse. For you, for them, for everyone. So what, I should just let them off the hook? Not let them off the hook, she said. But treat them differently. Look, I know they lied to you, and I know it hurts. But if you keep looking at it as if they betrayed you, you'll never let it go. Maybe it's better to think of it as you helping them whether they deserved it or not. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emma, I worked my ass off to earn this money. I skipped vacations, cut back on things I wanted, and stressed myself out for 1.5 years to make sure Stacy didn't have to struggle. And now you're telling me I should just accept it? Yes, she said simply. Accept it, take what they're offering, and move on. And in the future, don't give them anything. Ever. But right now, the best thing you can do for yourself is to let this go. I sat there staring at her. Part of me wanted to argue, to explain why this was different, why I couldn't just let it go. But deep down I knew that Emma was right. If I kept pushing, there was no guarantee I'd ever see the rest of the money. And even if I did, it might come at a price I wasn't willing to pay, whether it was dealing with the dangerous people my dad owed money to, or permanently burning any bridge I had left with my family. You're really okay with this? I asked, my voice softer now. I'm not okay with what they did, she said. But I don't want it to eat you alive, either. You're a good man, and you've already done more for them than most people would. Take the $40,000, use it as a lesson, and don't let them have that kind of power over you again. I nodded slowly, though I wasn't sure I was ready to take her advice. It felt like letting them win. But maybe Emma was right. Maybe the real victory was walking away with my peace of mind intact. The next day, I decided to go back and take the $40,000. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about setting boundaries forever. The next day, I drove back to my parents' house one last time. All the way there, I kept remembering what Emma had said. Take the money, use it as a lesson, and don't look back. It sounded simple in theory, but I knew this wasn't going to feel like a clean break. When I walked in, the tension was thick in the air. My dad had the money ready in cash, sitting in a plain envelope on the table. My mom was sitting on the couch, looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight, and Stacy was sitting next to her, clutching a handkerchief. No one spoke immediately. I walked over to the table, picked up the envelope, and counted the money. $40,000, just like they'd said. It wasn't all of it, but it was something. "I'm sorry," my father finally said. I looked up at him, but didn't answer. My mom spoke next, her voice shaking. "We never meant to hurt you. We thought we were doing what was best for Stacy, but now we see how wrong we were. We're so sorry." Still I said nothing. Stacy started to cry again. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just thought dash. I cut her off with a sharp look. She didn't finish her sentence. "You kept talking, apologizing, trying to explain yourself. But I didn't have it in me to listen anymore. I stood there in silence, letting them say whatever they had to say. None of it mattered. None of it would undo what they had done. When they finally ran out of things to say, I tucked the envelope under my arm, nodded once, and walked out the door. I didn't say goodbye. When I got home, I did exactly what I had planned. I went through my phone and blocked all their numbers: my dad, my mom, Stacy. Then I went on social media and did the same thing. It was surprisingly easy. With a few taps, they were gone. I felt lighter in a way, but there was still a heaviness in my chest. I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated. Just done. I spent the next few weeks adjusting to life without her. I didn't reach out, and they didn't try to contact me, at least not directly. One night, as we were cleaning up after dinner, Emma mentioned something. "Your mom sent me a message," she said casually. I looked up from the sink. "What did she say?" "She just wanted to know how you were. Said they miss you and hope you'll forgive them someday." I dried my hands on a towel and shook my head. "Did you reply?" "No," she said. "I figured it wasn't my place." Good. And that was that. I don't know if I'll ever forgive them, or if I'll ever want to rebuild those bridges. For now, I'm happy with the silence. It's peaceful, and after everything that's happened, peace is all I really wanted. They made their choices and I made mine. And as far as I'm concerned, this chapter of my life is closed for good.